For decades, Judge Judy wasn't just a television personality, she was authority itself. With one sharp look, one sentence, she could silence a room. Millions tuned in every day, not just to watch cases, but to watch her. The confidence, the control, the certainty. She became one of the most powerful women in television history, earning more than many Hollywood stars while commanding respect without ever raising her voice. But now, the courtroom is quiet. The familiar bench is empty. The gavel no longer strikes, and fans around the world are asking the same unsettling question: where is Judge Judy now? In 2025, her absence feels louder than her presence ever did. After ruling daytime television for over 25 years, Judge Judy stepped away from the role that defined her public identity. No dramatic farewell, no emotional goodbye, just a quiet transition that left viewers wondering if the woman who thrived on judgment finally chose silence. Some believe she retired into comfort. Others suspect something deeper: exhaustion, reflection, maybe even regret. What happens when someone who spent a lifetime telling others the truth must finally face their own? Behind the sharp words and fearless persona was a woman carrying the weight of responsibility, fame, and relentless public scrutiny. And when the cameras stopped rolling, the world didn't just lose a show, it lost a presence that felt permanent. So what does life look like now, when the courtroom doors are closed and the audience has gone home? The answer isn't as simple or as satisfying as people think. For Judge Judy, walking away from the courtroom was not just a career decision, it was the end of an identity she had carried for more than half her life. Long before television fame, she had already built her reputation inside real courtrooms, earning respect through discipline, precision, and an unshakable belief in accountability. When television came calling, she didn't change who she was. The world simply got a front row seat. For over 2 decades, her routine never changed. Early mornings, endless cases, relentless judgment. She became known not for empathy, but for clarity. In a world full of excuses, Judge Judy was certainty. People feared her disappointment more than her rulings. That authority didn't come from anger, it came from experience, from years of seeing human behavior repeat itself in different forms. But even the strongest authority comes with a cost. As the years passed, the pace never slowed. Filming schedules were intense. Public expectations were higher than ever. She was no longer just a judge, she was a brand, a symbol, a standard. Every word she spoke was replayed, debated, analyzed. There was no room for fatigue, no allowance for vulnerability. The Judge Judy audiences loved was expected to be sharp, decisive, and unwavering every single day. Behind the scenes, the pressure was enormous. Carrying that level of control for decades leaves little space for personal reflection. While millions saw confidence, few considered the emotional weight of constant judgment. Making decisions, even televised ones, means absorbing conflict, dishonesty, and human failure on a daily basis. Over time, that exposure changes a person. By the time her television run began nearing its end, Judge Judy was already thinking about life beyond the bench. Not because she had lost her sharpness, but because she understood something most people don't realize until too late. Power is exhausting. Being right all the time leaves no room to rest. That her final years on television were quieter, more deliberate. The same sharp words were there, but beneath them was reflection. She had already proven everything she needed to prove. Financial success was unmatched. Cultural impact was undeniable. There was nothing left to conquer. So when she finally stepped away, it wasn't dramatic. It was intentional. In 2025, Judge Judy's life looks nothing like the version audiences remember, and that is exactly how she wanted it. No daily courtroom chaos, no public arguments, no endless judgments. Instead, her days are controlled by choice, not obligation. She lives on her own terms, free from the pressure to perform authority for an audience. Yet stepping away didn't erase her influence. People still speak her name with respect. Clips of her rulings continue to circulate, reminding viewers why she was different, why she lasted, why she mattered. But for the woman herself, those memories are part of a closed, not something she needs to relive. What many don't realize is that walking away takes more strength than staying. When your identity is tied to control, letting go feels like surrender. Judge Judy didn't surrender, she concluded. There is a quiet dignity in knowing when your work is done now, without cameras watching, without expectations demanding perfection. She finally has something she spent a lifetime denying herself: silence. Not weakness, not absence, but peace. And perhaps that is the most powerful ruling she ever made. Away from the courtroom lights and constant attention, Judge Judy's life in 2025 has become quieter than most people ever imagined. For someone who once thrived in conflict, silence now fills her days. The transformation is striking, not because she has faded, but because she has chosen restraint over dominance, reflection over authority. Age has a way of reshaping even the strongest personalities. The sharp posture, the commanding presence, the unbreakable certainty, they still exist, but they no longer need to be displayed. Physical energy is guarded carefully now. Long days under studio lights have been replaced by shorter routines, intentional rest, and a slower pace that once would have felt unfamiliar. time is no longer something to control. It is something to respect. What fans rarely consider is the emotional aftermath of decades spent judging others. Listening to conflict, dishonesty, and human failure every day leaves residue. It settles quietly, shaping perspective, hardening edges, and forcing emotional distance. Stepping away from that environment was not just retirement, it was recovery. In private moments, reflection comes naturally. A life built on discipline leaves little room for regret, yet even Judge Judy is not immune to it. There are moments she did not attend, relationships that required patience instead of certainty, and years when authority took precedence over softness. These reflections are not filled with guilt, they are filled with awareness. With age comes the understanding that being right is not always the same as being fulfilled. Despite her wealth and success, isolation can still exist. Fame creates distance, not closeness. People approach with expectations, not curiosity. In her quieter life, relationships are fewer but more intentional. Trust matters more than admiration. Conversations are chosen carefully. Privacy has become a form of protection, something she earned after decades of exposure. Health, naturally, plays a role. Aging brings limits that even discipline cannot erase. Energy is measured. Strength is maintained deliberately. The body no longer obeys commands the way it once did, and accepting that requires humility. For someone whose life was built on control, acceptance is its own challenge. Yet there is resilience in her solitude. Judge Judy does not see aging as decline. She sees it as release. No more proving, no more performing, no more carrying the expectations of millions. She has already left her mark. Now, life is about preserving clarity, independence, and dignity. There is also something deeply human in watching such a powerful figure embrace quiet. The world associates relevance with visibility. But Judge Judy understands a deeper truth. Influence does not disappear when the cameras turn off. It simply changes form. She still follows the world. She still forms opinions. But she no longer needs to deliver them publicly. That restraint, once unthinkable, has become a source of peace. Authority has been replaced with wisdom, less loud but more lasting. For viewers who grew up watching her, this version may feel unfamiliar. But for the woman herself, it is earned. Every sharp ruling, every decisive moment, every uncompromising stance built toward this freedom. In 2025, Judge Judy is not lost. She is not forgotten. She is not diminished. She is resting in the aftermath of a life fully lived, carrying the weight of experience with grace, and choosing silence not because she has nothing left to say, but because she has already said everything that mattered. Judge Judy's absence from television didn't create a gap. It created a silence that revealed just how powerful her presence once was. When she disappeared from daily screens, audiences didn't simply miss a show. They missed a sense of order, a voice that cut through chaos, a figure who represented consequences in a world increasingly allergic to them. Her legacy is not built on kindness or sympathy, it is built on truth. She never promised comfort, she promised clarity. In a culture that often celebrates emotion over accountability, Judge Judy stood firm in logic, responsibility, and discipline. That is why she lasted when others faded. She did not bend to trends, she became one. For generations, she shaped how people viewed justice, fairness, and personal responsibility. Viewers didn't just watch her rulings, they absorbed her philosophy. Pay your bills, honor your word, take responsibility for your choices. Simple principles, delivered without apology. Over time, those words became part of everyday language, repeated in homes far removed from the courtroom. Yet legacy has a cost. Being a symbol means being misunderstood. Critics called her harsh, cold, unforgiving, but what they often missed was the deeper intention behind her firmness. She believed clarity was kinder than confusion, that accountability was more respectful than sympathy, and that enabling failure was far crueler than confronting it. Now in 2025, as her influence continues without her presence, the meaning of her work feels clearer than ever. In a time when authority is questioned and discipline is softened, her absence feels intentional, almost symbolic. She represented a generation that valued structure, and her departure marked the end of an era. But endings don't erase impact. Clips of her rulings still circulate, watched by millions who weren't even alive when her show began. Her words still spark debate, admiration, and reflection. That longevity is rare. It speaks to something deeper than entertainment. It speaks to relevance, rooted in principle. Personally, this phase of her life carries quiet satisfaction. Not pride, but completion. Judge Judy doesn't need validation from modern audiences. She has already been tested, challenged, and proven. Her legacy is sealed, not because everyone agreed with her, but because everyone recognized her authority. There is also emotional weight in knowing when to leave. Staying too long risks dilution. She chose preservation. By stepping away at her peak, she protected the integrity of her work and herself. That decision reflects wisdom earned through decades of observing human behavior at its rawest. For fans, her absence invites reflection. It reminds us that even the most commanding figures are human, that strength eventually seeks rest, that control eventually gives way to acceptance. Watching Judge Judy now means remembering not just what she said, but what she stood for. Her life after television is not defined by loss, it is defined by legacy fulfilled. She does not chase relevance because relevance chases her. She does not explain herself because her work already did. In a world obsessed with constant visibility, her quiet withdrawal feels almost revolutionary. It suggests that power doesn't require permanence, that impact doesn't need maintenance, that knowing when to step back is its own form of authority. Judge Judy's story is not about disappearance. It is about conclusion. A life spent in judgment, now resting in reflection. A voice that once ruled the room, now content in silence. And a legacy that continues, not because she demands it, but because it endures. When the cameras stopped rolling, the world assumed Judge Judy had stepped away from relevance. But time has revealed a different truth. Her absence did not erase her presence, it defined it. In stepping back, she allowed her legacy to speak without interruption, without explanation, without defense. Judge Judy never asked to be liked. She asked to be respected. And respect, unlike popularity, does not fade with silence. It deepens. In 2025, her life is not measured by appearances or headlines. It is measured by impact already made. She no longer carries the burden of expectation, the responsibility of performance, or the weight of being a symbol for millions. That freedom is not retirement, it is release. There is something profoundly human about watching someone who once commanded chaos choose peace. A woman who spent decades correcting others now embraces stillness. A voice that once filled courtrooms now values quiet reflection. This transition is not weakness, it is completion. Judge Judy's story forces an uncomfortable realization. Power is temporary, but principle is permanent. The authority she represented did not come from television. Television came from her authority. When the show ended, the values remained. Accountability, responsibility, consequence. These ideas do not retire. For many viewers, her presence felt constant, almost eternal. Her departure reminded us that even the strongest figures are subject to time. But rather than resisting that truth, she accepted it with dignity. She left before she was diminished, before repetition replaced purpose, before authority turned into routine. That choice speaks louder than any ruling she ever delivered. In her private life now, there is no performance, no audience to persuade, no conflict to resolve. There is simply time, something she once controlled with precision, now allowed to pass naturally. Days are quieter, priorities are smaller but deeper. Peace has replaced pressure, and yet, she is not forgotten. She is referenced, quoted, studied. Her words still resonate because they were never tied to trends. They were tied to truth. Judge Judy did not disappear. She concluded a that did not need continuation. In doing so, she taught a final lesson, perhaps her most important one. That knowing when to stop is a form of wisdom, that stepping away can be an act of strength, and that a life lived with clarity needs no encore. As time moves forward, new faces will rise, new voices will command attention, but few will carry the weight she did. Few will be remembered not for kindness or controversy, but for certainty. Her courtroom may be empty, but her influence remains occupied in the minds of millions. And long after the screen fades to black, the values she stood for continue to echo. Judge Judy's story was never about television. It was about authority earned, integrity maintained, and the courage to leave at the right moment. And that may be the strongest judgment she ever made.